Horror movies have a strange relationship with Netflix. The second something bigger drops, they get buried in the scroll and never clicked on again. That's the premise of today's list. I've got 10 horror movies on Netflix right now that deserve way more attention than they're getting. Some are quiet, slow burn dread, a couple is outright brutal, and a couple might genuinely mess with you in the best way. All 10 I stand behind, and I'll tell you exactly why. Quick note, other streaming platform availability for everything on this list is pinned into first comment below. And if you like this kind of horror recommendation, subscribing genuinely helps. I put these out regularly so you never run out of something good to watch.
What's happening? What's happening? Oh my God.
I completely understand why this one didn't find a big audience because I genuinely don't know how you'd market it. It opens looking like an elegant, prestige-adjacent drama about two rival musicians, and if you cut a trailer around that first act, you'd be selling audiences a movie that doesn't actually exist. Because about a third of the way in, this thing pivots hard into body horror, and it keeps doing that more than once in ways I'm not going to spoil. Allison Williams and Logan Browning are the reason this works as well as it does. Both of them commit completely to some genuinely difficult material, and Browning in particular has one stretch in this film that's about as visceral as horror performances get. The film also uses a rewinding structure to fill in gaps in the story, and the first time it does that, it's a great trick. By the third time, it's a little much. There's also some heavy subject matter here that deserves a heads up going in, so this isn't a casual watch. But if you want a film that refuses to be predictable, this is a strong one. The film is called The Perfection.
Don't show you in the nature documentary. It's a warning.
We shouldn't be here.
This is one I think a lot of people wrote off just from the setup. 4 friends, a hike in the Swedish wilderness, one of them carrying guilt over a friend's death. It sounds like a template you've seen before. And some of that skepticism is fair. The dialogue between these guys gets grating at points. A lot of yelling and not a lot of listening. And the characters aren't always likable. But director David Bruckner does something with atmosphere here that I think gets overlooked because the writing takes the criticism. The fog, the flashlight beams, the sense that something in these woods actively resents you being there. That part of the film is firing on all cylinders the entire time. And when the creature design is finally revealed, it's genuinely one of the more inventive folk horror monsters I've seen in a while. It comes from a real specific piece of mythology, and it's not what you're expecting. If you can get past some rough character work, the mood alone makes this worth your time. The film is called The Ritual.
Do you live nearby?
No, not really.
I think this one got lost simply because Woman on the Run from a Killer is a crowded shelf, and on paper this looks like just another entry on it. What sets it apart is the killer himself. No mask, no theatrics, just an ordinary looking guy. And that's what makes the whole thing uncomfortable in a way flashier slashers don't manage. Jules Wilcox carries this film, and she plays her character as genuinely resourceful rather than a passive victim, which I appreciated. Director Hyams keeps the first hour tight and tense. Where the film loses me a little is the back half. The escape sequences get a touch too convenient, and there's a supporting character introduced late who undercuts more tension than he adds. I won't say more than that.
You hear me?
Still, for a lean, mean, no-frills thriller, this one delivers more than its reputation suggests. The film is called Alone. This one genuinely frustrates me because it's one of the best looking horror films on Netflix and almost nobody talks about it. It's a period piece werewolf film set in 18th century France, and director Sean Ellis, who also shot the film himself, built atmosphere with fog and foliage and darkness in a way that feels closer to a historical drama than a monster movie. What I appreciate is that this isn't a jump scare delivery machine. There's real weight underneath it. Colonial guilt, class conflict, a village destroyed in one of the more striking lawn takes I've seen in recent horror. And when the creature finally shows up, the design is gnarly and strange in a way that owes more to practical effects legends than modern werewolves. If I've got one gripe, it's that the film occasionally gets so wrapped up in its own metaphors that it forgets to just be scary for a scene or two. But for something this ambitious and this beautifully shot, I'll take that trade. The film is called The Cursed.
20년 후에다.
The reason this one slipped past people is the premise sounds like a gimmick. Two women 20 years apart talking through the same landline. It's an easy film to underestimate on a logline. It's not a gimmick. What sells the whole thing is Jeon Jung-seo, who plays a woman whose grip on reality unravels in real time. And it's one of the more unsettling performances I've seen in a Korean thriller. Park Shin-hye holds her own opposite her too. The film builds dread methodically, and the score does a lot of quiet, effective work underneath the tension. I'll be honest about the one thing that bothers me. If you think too hard about the time travel mechanics, some of it doesn't fully hold together. There are a couple of wait, wouldn't they remember that moments. But the performances and the atmosphere carry it well past that. The film is called The Call. This is a home invasion thriller flipped on its head, and I think part of why it doesn't get talked about enough now is that it came out, did well, and just quietly faded from the conversation. Three young thieves break into a blind man's house, expecting an easy score. It is not an easy score. Director Fede Arabedes does something really smart with geography here. You learn the layout of this one house right alongside the characters, and it turns every hallway and every locked door into a source of dread. Jane Levy and Stephen Lang are both doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and Lang in particular is memorable in a role that keeps shifting how you're supposed to feel about him. There's a twist about halfway through that pushes the film into much darker territory, so consider that your warning. But as a pure exercise in sustained tension, this one still holds up. The film is called Don't Breathe. Quick pausing for the top 4. If you're enjoying this list, subscribing genuinely helps the channel, and it means you won't miss the next one of these. A like on the video does more than people think too. Appreciated either way. Back to the list. This one gets filed under Ghost Story, and people move on, which undersells it completely. It's about a refugee couple placed in a rundown house in England, and yes, there's a haunting. But director Remy Weeks weaves that supernatural horror directly into the real, everyday horror of displacement and grief in a way that most haunted house films aren't even attempting. Soap Dirisu and Wonmi Musaku give two of the strongest performances in horror from the last several years. The scares work. There are a few legitimately effective jump moments, but they land differently because you're emotionally invested in these two people well beyond whether they survive the house. By the end, this film sucker punches you in a way I genuinely didn't see coming. This isn't spooky for spooky's sake, it's actually moving. The film is called His House. If you've ever said horror doesn't have atmosphere anymore, this is the answer. Robert Eggers directs this like a man personally offended by historical inaccuracies, and the result is one of the most dread-soaked, slow-burn folk horror films on the platform. A family, exiled to the edge of the woods in colonial New England, starts unraveling. A missing infant, failing crops, suspicion curdling between people who are supposed to trust each other. Anya Taylor-Joy gives a genuinely star-making performance here, playing a young woman crushed under her family's paranoia in a way that's more upsetting than any monster in the film. This isn't a jump scare movie, so go in knowing that. It's a something is deeply wrong and I can't look away movie. And the final 10 minutes earn every bit of the buildup. The film is called The Witch.
And then it's over.
This might be the single most stressful film on this entire list, and I mean that as a genuine compliment. A punk band gets booked for a gig, realizes too late the venue is run by neo-Nazi skinheads, witnesses something they shouldn't have, and ends up barricaded in a green room fighting for their lives. Director Jeremy Saulnier shoots the violence here in a way that's matter-of-fact and ugly rather than stylized, which makes every close call feel like it actually hurts. Patrick Stewart is genuinely unsettling as a club owner, playing him as calm and organized rather than a cartoon, and the rest of the cast plays every scene with real human fear instead of movie tough guy energy. I found myself physically tense watching this. If you want a siege thriller that never lets up, this is it. The film is called Green Room. And here's my number one, and I don't think it's a particularly controversial pick. Guillermo del Toro has wanted to make this movie for basically his entire career, and you can feel that in every frame of it. This isn't a cheap mad scientist, angry mob retelling. It's lush, operatic, and genuinely heartbreaking. Jacob Elordi plays the creature as a full, tragic character rather than a monster, carrying rage and gentleness in the same performance, and you end up sympathizing with him far more than you'd expect going in. Oscar Isaac avoids a trap of playing Victor as camp. He's terrifyingly believable as a man convinced he's doing good, which is a much scarier version of the character than the usual mad scientist shorthand. The visual design alone, courtesy of Tamara de Burrell and Kate Howley, deserves recognition on its own. This isn't just a strong horror film, it's one of the better films, period, to come out recently. The film is called Frankenstein. That's the list. If you're looking for what to watch next, our next video is 12 recent movies that quietly slip past everyone. Films I genuinely think deserved a lot more attention, and I'll tell you exactly why each one is worth tracking down. Go check that one out. If you got something out of this one, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.